Hi, this is Josh Newton of WhiteSource Software. This is the second in a series of videos on the WhiteSource integration with GitHub.com. The focus of this video is the global configuration options available for your GitHub.com organization. With larger organizations having dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of repositories, managing the required .whitesource file, as we covered in the first video, can involve a lot of administrative overhead. That's where the global configuration comes in, as it allows you to create settings that are inherited by default for all new repositories. A key point is that the global config will not go back and delete the .whitesource file from any repositories that already have the integration, but there is a way to migrate those existing repos to the new global config, which we will cover later in this video. To review the documentation for the global config, click the question mark in the upper right corner of the UI to open up our documentation Confluence page. In the search bar, type global config and open the global repo configuration page. This outlines the process for creating the global config, but let's walk through the steps within github.com as well. First, we need to create a new repo titled WhiteSource-config, and the syntax must be exactly that. Then we need to integrate this repo using the same process as we showed in the setting up a repo video, which is going to settings, applications, and then enabling this new repo. When we click into the code section, we now see three files: a README, a global config.json, and a repo config.json. Let's start with the global config, and we'll see it is defaulted to the setting, which creates an onboarding PR for each new repo added to this organization. When we look at the documentation, we see there are three options: the default, which creates the PR that then must be merged to create the .whitesource file, or you can automatically push the .whitesource file into the new repo and bypass the PR, or a third option, which bypasses both the PR and the automatic .whitesource creation and forces the new repo to only use the settings from the global config with no additional settings available to them. Back in GitHub, let's look at a repo that was created after the global config was added. Here's the pull request that was created automatically from the global config. And when we look at the .whitesource file, notice that the only parameter by default is that this repo is inheriting its settings from this global config file. You can add additional settings beyond the global settings. For example, if the global config has the minimum severity level set to medium, but you want this particular repo to have a minimum severity level set to low, you can add that parameter here. Remember that the global config applies to newly created repos in this org, but you can enact a migration process that will update the .whitesource file of any existing repos to point to the new global config settings. That process is covered here in the Migrating Existing Repositories section of the documentation. You will need to create a file called migration.json with the syntax listed here, then commit and push the file. This will start a process to migrate all of the existing repos to the new global config. Thank you for watching this presentation. If you have further questions, please reach out to your WhiteSource representative, or you can visit our website for more information.